All right, so today let's talk about Kestner dolls. And Kestner dolls are German antique dolls. And you can see we got quite a bit of their products right here. I probably have about maybe 50 or 60 Kestner dolls in my collection, all different kinds. And so before I begin to show you each one of these beautiful, beautiful antique dolls, let me tell you a little bit about the German toy industry. The German toy trade with the United States was very popular around the 1860s and the 1870s. That doesn't mean to say that America did not receive imported toys from Germany before that. Germany was well known, especially for their wooden figures. And they had lots of forests in Germany where they can get wood very easily, and they were expert carvers. So you would see a lot of Noah's Ark toys for children and blocks, probably before the 1860s and 70s, all the way through the early 20th century. Germany was the toy capital of the world, and so especially like the German toy trade, again, I said within the United States was very popular, especially during the Civil War. Well, before the Civil War and after the Civil War, through the 1870s, and certainly by the 1880s and 1890s. These toys were going to places such as San Francisco, Kansas City, New York City, Philadelphia, St. Louis, and other places throughout the United States to be sold. Some toy sellers bought directly from Germany to cut out the middleman, and other places, pretty much became like factories that received German toys and were distributors for them. So that's quite interesting. Now, back in the day, toy production was a cottage industry, and I'll get to that in a minute. What a cottage industry is, and it was a cottage industry basically minus the charm of Santa's workshop. It wasn't delightful. Let's just put it that way. So families in places such as Thuringia and places like Sonneberg and Erzgebirge, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right because I cannot pronounce German, churned out toys by the thousands, and that's quite interesting. Now, by the end of the 19th century, Sonneberg was well known for crafting and distributing toys of all kinds, not just dolls, and but it was particularly famed for its doll making industry. This booming production drew vendors and tourists from near and far who came to witness the origins of children's playthings, which is quite interesting. At the turn of the century, the 20th century, that is, a guy by the name of Martin Hardy, who is a recognized authority on English print and engravings. Actually, I found an article. He describes wandering the streets of Sonneberg in Germany, or as he calls it, the Kingdom of Dolls. And there he described wandering the streets of Sonneberg, and he saw a constant procession of carts and wagons filled with limbs, clothing, and headless bodies. Now that's quite morbid, right? What struck Hardy as a grim and ghastly funeral procession in his mind would later come to life. So once the subjects were given porcelain heads, glass eyes, and in some cases wigs made of human or mohair, they would be sent across the continent and into the homes and imaginations of children. Until then, workers stuffed legs, cut dresses, glued heads, cut and inserted eyes into these porcelain heads, as you see here, and painted the face into these lifeless forms. The same kind of advertisements for German toys appeared in Britain as in the United States and all over the world. Even the notable toy producing nation of France, which specialized in expensive items for young ones, by the way, they were the luxury toy makers, and they couldn't touch Germany at all when it came to price. Nobody made a better product than Germany for so little money due to the cottage industry. So, again, the kinds of advertisements for German toys appeared all over the world. And yeah, so it was hard for other countries to compete with Germany. It was so entrenched and the products were so very inexpensive that nobody could hold a candle to German toy makers. when it came to price. Now, here we have several J.D. Kestner German dolls. Now, I noticed J.D. Kestner had made some of the greatest dolls for any German doll maker besides companies such as Simon and Halbig. Now, I've never seen a bad German or a bad Kestner doll. Now I've seen bad German dolls, and when I say bad German dolls, they were painted poorly and made very poorly. But when it came to Kestner and companies such as Simon and Halbig and a few other notable ones, nobody could make a doll like this, and that is actually cool. So now the Kestner Porcelain Factory was located in, don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, so don't laugh, Waltershausen in Germany, and made dolls and toy related porcelain products up until the 1930s. So they started in the 1840s until the factory closed down in 1938. Now, why do you think they closed down in 1938? Because most of the people buying them were mostly Americans, Brits, and people from other countries. But America probably mostly the biggest prolific purchaser of these toys to sell. Now, in the 30s, we started with the rise of Hitler. Then we went to war. Now, also there was a gap in German toy making for the United States industry during World War One as well. German products were considered evil. Nobody wanted to purchase toys from the enemy. So we had a little bit of a shutdown, if you know what I mean, in German toys being sold in the U.S. and of course, to our allies. Then they started to sell toys, but they were inferior. They could never actually shine a candle to the German toys in quality. So yeah, and then during the 30s, again, the late 30s, and in, of course, World War II, the thick of it, you would not be finding German products in U.S. homes. So this firm actually made China head dolls. And here's an example of a China head doll. They were glazed and glossy, not like their Bisque counterparts. So they started out also with paper mache dolls, probably earlier than the China head dolls. They also made wax head dolls. You don't see too many of the Kestner wax head dolls being sold. Wax actually is a very, very poor material to make dolls in, and they don't last as long. So there's not as many of them around. So again, so they started basically making like paper mache and composition mixed with paper mache dolls. Then they graduated with dolls made out of wax and china, and then we went into Bisque, which became basically their last product that they made. Besides, probably something called celluloid and composition. So heads made out of that material. But so they were noted for their best dolls. This firm made a variety of dolls again, in many hairstyles, including dolls called, don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, so don't laugh, Tofflings, frozen dolls, which was all like basically all China, including the limbs, the arms, the torso, and the head and the neck, all in one piece. So it was a doll that was not movable. It was like a figurine almost. They made molded china and bisque, colorful, like molded boots on the bottoms of some of their dolls that had cloth stuffed bodies. Here's an example of molded boots, and you can see that right there. Not very well. There's a lot of dust under her skirt. But yeah, so you can actually readily, pretty much, once you start to collect dolls, and it may take a little time, you can figure out without even seeing the markings on the back of the head that it's a Kestner made product. Now, Kestner dolls can mostly be readily identified by their mouths. So their mouth painting is very distinctive. They have lips with upturned corners. Now, they're China head dolls. Now, I'm not 100% sure that this China head doll from the 1860s or the Civil War era is definitely a Kestner doll, but Kestners were known for their upturned, I don't know if you could see that, their upturned lips with a space, like a white space in between their lips. Now, if this is a Kestner, um, again, I'm not 100% sure. That feature is already there. Now, other German China head doll makers did do that as well, a few other companies. I'm not 100% sure which ones did it, but there were other China head and Bisque head doll companies making dolls, and they had used that feature as well, such as like Conta and Bone and a few other notable makers. So here we have, okay, here's our oldest doll of the group here. So as you can see, we have Bisque dolls in the back, which are their later invention. And again, we have this Civil War era China head doll. And what's really neat about this doll is she has her original dress, which you barely ever see. Most likely, most of the original clothes go missing with these dolls. Now, that does not mean that Kestner made the dress for her. Most of the dolls just came dressed in underwear, which underwear that they called back then chemises. So it would be like a little slip and a little undershirt type of top. And they would just come basically naked, and a child or the child's mother or nanny or family member would make a dress for the doll. But this is pretty neat to see an original dress of that time period. So here you can see the molded hair. I don't know if you can see that. You can see these little molded curls. Her head and her shoulders are in one piece, and you see that right here. And it has that nice glazed china look. Um, the rest of the body was made out of like cloth. Sometimes they were made out of different materials or different kinds of cloth, but pretty much they were made out of cloth. Now the hands, you can tell an earlier China head doll, meaning that it's probably from the 1860s or 1870s, by what's known as their spoon-shaped hands. You can see all the fingers are attached, and it's almost like a spoon shape. And let me turn it this way as well to show you. And there you go. But look at the detail on those fingers. Let's get a zoom in there. Look at the detail on that. That's a pretty awesome. If you look at that, let's turn it this way. That's very interesting. Okay, so let's show the body. Okay, so we have our China head doll over here with her original dress. And what's even more exquisite is she has her original undergarments. So you see the slips, the layers and layers and layers of slips. As I lift up, you see it. You see this beautiful workmanship. It's just amazing how much trouble they went through to make this. Just a simple like child's dolls undergarments. And they tried to make it in actual scale to what a real lady would wear. And she has her little pantaloons that are original to her as well. And that's really neat. And there we go with the boots. Now, another way you can tell an earlier China head doll, one from about the 1860s to about the 1870s or earlier, is by their flat feet. So their boots would not have heels on them. Now, starting towards the late 1860s, 1870s, they would get little heels on the back of their boots. So I thought you guys would find that quite interesting. All right. So now, generally, you will not find a marking on the back of these China head dolls. It's almost nearly impossible to see anything written, like a mold number or a country of origin. Sometimes you will see like a little letter. I don't know if we could see that here, but I thought I just saw something engraved in the China on the back of the shoulder head. And you might see a little symbol or number or letter. And that's quite interesting. I've never actually noticed that before until today. Okay, so next, let's go on to the next product. So let's go into the earliest of these Bisque head dolls in this group here. And that would be the one on the left, the one on the right, and the one in the center. And the one in the back is a later German Kestner doll. And there's a difference. Now, a lot of the dolls, actually, when they were first made, came with what was known as closed mouths. So you would not see teeth like this one. This sometimes Kestner dolls' teeth are made out of porcelain or actually the same glass as their eyes. This actually looks like carved porcelain that was carved actually into her head with a little space and opening so you can see her teeth. But then the earlier dolls would have closed mouths with no teeth. But these ones are actually just preceding, just before this particular marvel was invented with the open mouth with the teeth. Now, before these dolls, they had completely closed mouths. You did not see a space in the center um, at all. So it would be just closed lips. And those ones are actually more sought after than the open mouth dolls with the teeth. They were fewer were made. This became the more popular type of doll, and all the doll makers were inserting teeth into their mouth. Now these are called open closed mouth dolls. And not only did Kestner make them, other companies made them as well. So this just proceeded where they would cut the opening out. I don't know if you can see that I'm trying to get the lighting. That they would cut this little opening out of the mouth and insert the teeth. But as you see here, they did not do that. So this is what's known as an open closed mouth Kestner doll. And this is probably an earlier version of their dolly face doll or child dolls. This is more of like a lady. And you can see her exquisite, exquisite antique costume. Now, this is original to her, not probably a factory dress, but made by her owner. Again, most of them did come undressed. The French dolls were more likely the dolls that came dressed. Of course, there were much more money, and they came in the most beautiful, high fashion gowns. And you won't generally see this with a cheap, inexpensive German doll, although I hate calling Kestner dolls cheap. Again, they came dressed in underwear. So a lady lovingly probably had a seamstress or herself created this beautiful evening gown. And if you look, she almost has like a Marie Antoinette look to her. And I'll show you her hair, her original mohair wig. And that's a very Marie Antoinette looking. Now, let me turn her around. And again, look at how exquisite this hat is. And if you zoom in, you see these beautiful velveteen flowers and ostrich feathers that were dyed to this beautiful pink shade. Here's the back of her gown. You see like a trail of, I think that's moire, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, don't laugh, moire ribbon. And you can see that, look at that, with flowers. And somebody really went through a lot of trouble to make this doll's outfit. If you look under, she's wearing like a little chignon, or it's like a braided little piece of hair that's pinned up. Very, very interesting to give her that fancy, fancy, haughty-taughty lady look. And let's turn her around. And again, this is an open, closed mouth Kestner. Now, my other Kestners over here that you see are also open, closed mouth Kestners. They do not have the teeth inserted. Here's another version. Now, these were probably made anywhere between the late 1880s, 1890s, all the way through probably about 1893, somewhere around there, 1890. I don't have a precise date for them. Most of the child dolls, like this one here, were marked with a mold number. And they had a mold number almost like their design. So it would be model, like a model. And they had hundreds of different models of these dolly faced dolls. This particular one is marked 168. So it says made in Germany. And that little number you see, like 6.5, and then 168, and then a 7.5, tells you the head size. So they came in all different sizes. And so you would see a number after the mold number denoting the head size, which is pretty cool. So now these are shoulder head dolls. Which is quite different from this one with a swivel head that swivels around and has a composition and wood jointed body. And look at her, her wig fell down. Okay, so the articulated dolls like this one, you can move their head back and forth. You can move their little arms up and down. Now, I'm not going to take her costume off to show you, but the little hands could be swiveled around, her knees, her legs. Her arms could be folded up, down, and posed into all different positions, which is quite different from their shoulder head dolls. So mainly the bodies were made out of kid leather with these little bisque hands, and pretty interesting. Now, I would want to take the dress off of this doll, but this is such an old costume that it will disintegrate. And if you look closely, again, she has her original undergarments underneath, and you have these beautiful handcrafted kid leather boots with these little pink embroidered laces in them. That's quite interesting. Now, if you look at the ankle area, I don't know if you can see this, but above where the shoe is, now look at the boot. It's going way up here, but if you look above the boot, you'll see kid leather. And that is a shoulder head doll with the body made out of kid leather, and the lower hands up to about here would be bisque. The rest would be all kid leather. Her head would be in one piece with the shoulder, just a lot like this one, the China head doll, where you see that with the head and the shoulders are in one piece, and then the rest attached to like a cloth body. And it would be like sewn in with these little threads here and attached to the body. Very interesting. Okay, so now you see the finery of this one. This one is absolutely amazing with these little rhinestones. Somebody spared no expense making the outfit for this doll. So the next doll we have is another open closed mouth doll. And it's actually not molded. So none of these have like a design like say this 168 over here. So these particular ones came with either a letter or a number on the back of their head. So it would like say C 7.5, and it would denote the head size, or it would say 8, 7.5. So those are known as like alphabet Kestners or number Kestners. And they were the earlier ones that preceded the child face dolls. So again, all three of these dolls are the same design, but they all look differently. And it's because of the outfit and the hairstyles. You see how a hairstyle can change the look of something? Pretty cool. So now we have right here, this one, again, probably from the late 1880s, 1890s, and again, an open closed mouth doll. And you can see the space in between her lips that's showing you like these little, almost like simulated teeth. We got the glass eyes. And to tell a Kestner, here's one trick. Always look at the corners of her mouth. You see that little upturned spot in the corner? Almost every single Kestner had that. And let's go into here. And you can see that little upturned corner. Now, this one again also has an open closed mouth. And you see that little space where little teeth were simulated. And this is a blue-eyed beauty. And a lot of them had sleep eyes, so their eyes, when you laid them down, now I stuffed the insides of their heads so that doesn't happen, just to protect their eyes. But when you lay them down, they had leaded weights inside their head that were attached to the glass eyes, and their eyes would open and shut as you laid them down or put them in a standing position. Now this one's quite beautiful. Look at, again, that Kestner look. And Kestner also has distinctive eyebrows. A lot of them are quite arched, and they have feathering. Now, some of the lesser companies, the lesser German factories, would not go through that trouble and just do one stroke for the eyebrows. There you go. There's another Kestner trait, these beautiful eyebrows. And so what I do is I'll show you, I stuff the inside of their heads with, actually, let's take it from this doll. I stuffed the insides of the heads with paper, and I'll show you why. Okay, so they came with this little thing made out of plaster called a pate. And a pate would, here, let's show you. Here's her without her wig. Quite eerie looking, but she's still beautiful nonetheless. And by the way, there's the thing I was telling you about. You'll see a letter like C, and I believe that says 7.5, and then up there you see another little like 2.25 or 2, I can't even see it, like 2.5. That's how you know it's like one of the earlier pre-dolly face Kestners. And if you look inside the head, you'll see plaster. I don't know if you could see that. And that either if they did not have the sleeping glass eyes, they would have what was known as like set eyes, and they didn't open or shut. So that was a more expensive thing. So the sleeping eye dolls were actually more expensive than the set glass eye dolls. So if you look inside, you'll see globs of plaster. And what happens is over time, though, the plaster with the humidity in the air just totally uh, actually falls out and their glass eyes break inside their head. And you don't want that to happen. So, what I do is I stuff the inside of the head with paper and then I got the pate off. It's not easy to get these pates off without damaging the head, but this would have been glued onto the head like so. If you take a cloth and just keep wetting, going around the edges, and you give it a little pry with your fingernail, it'll pop off. That's not an easy thing to do. So that's what I do. I stuff the insides of their heads to protect their glass eyes from eventually falling out and breaking. So there you go. So last but not least, I'll show you one of their child dolls. And let me just move everything aside. And also, it's also amazing to have their original wigs, which were generally made out of human hair or mohair, which came from an animal, I believe, like such as a goat or a sheep. Okay, so we have a child face doll over here, which is also known as their dolly face dolls. This is their 168 model. And this is a later doll. This doll was probably made about 1910, I'd say. And this innovation over here was eyelashes. I don't know if you can see that, but you see these little mohair eyelashes. And that was made to give the doll like a realistic look. Now, a lot of times with the dolls with these little mohair eyelashes, the mohair disintegrates after 100 years. And a lot of times you'll just see a doll with no eyelashes painted on top and no mohair lashes at all. And it gives it a little bit of a freaky look. But again, those mohair lashes eventually will disintegrate. And you will see no painted lashes above her lids, like, say, this one. And let's show you that. You see how the eyelashes are painted? So this is their 168 model, their child doll. And she's quite pretty. Now, they made many, many, many different dolls. They made, like, one of their most popular was their 154 model, which was a shoulder head. Quite like this one, but it had teeth that were inserted. So this is pre 154. And that mold was the most prolific mold of all. That's the most popular Kestner doll you'll find is a 154 mold. So here we go with the 168. And again, this is later down their production towards about 1910, 1915. This was more of their popular model. They had many, many, many other models. So again, there's the thing I told you what I do. I stuff the inside of the head so that the eyes, it protects the glass eyes from actually falling inside the head. But I will show you the sleeping mechanism of the eye. And let's go ahead and do that. So as you can see, I really stuffed it very well because I just don't want those glass eyes breaking inside the head. I'm going to show you something pretty neat. And the Germans were innovative toy makers. And they came up with the most amazing, amazing ideas. And this is almost like a magician's trick, right? With like the scarf trick. Okay, here we go. So we're going to go inside the head and take a look. And as you can see, look at the eyes. And they're attached to a lead weight. And you have plaster on each side of the eye. And I'm going to show you how her eyes sleep. And again, there's the markings on the back of this particular model. It says made in Germany, and it has a number 6.5, 168, and 7.5. So here we go. We're going to show you a German doll with sleepy eyes. And it freaks a lot of people out when they see that. So check that out. The eyelids would have had like a coating of wax on it to give it a realistic skin-like look. And then when she sprung upwards, watch what happens. And the eyes open up. So that's it. That's my presentation on Kestner dolls. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And I will see you guys all soon. So long.